This is KTN News.
My name is Najma Ismail. This is Life in Isolation, and we're joined by Lambert Oigara from CBT Kenya. Today we're going to talk about something very interesting. You know, we're all trying to cope with the coronavirus pandemic, the social isolation, the partial lockdown, and some of us will be developing some unhealthy coping mechanisms. We might be overeating, we might be overindulging, and maybe develop some addictions during this time. Yes, kindly let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you, Najma, for having me once again. That question is very important because, like I said earlier on, we are as human beings, we are always in control of situations.
Yes.
Or so we believe, that we are always in control. So when there is a sense of lack of control, then automatically there is that fear.
Yes.
Which is normal. It's a normal emotion because there are a number of emotions. There's fear, there's sadness, there's disgust, there's anger. All those are normal emotions. So when you have that fear that you're not in control,
yes,
because you're not interacting with others the way you used to interact, and now you're in isolation in an environment that is more like control or it constrains you, then there's a high likelihood that you might tend to look for ways to cope. Sadly, what might happen is you will end up using negative coping mechanisms. So if, for example, the way in society, they say that, if it's alcohol, you need to drink in moderation. 350 meals, at least 2 beers of 350 meals, not 500.
Yes.
So you can imagine if then now you are home the whole day.
Wow.
And the fridge is right next to you, or the store is right, not very far from you.
Unlimited.
Then you can imagine what would possibly happen. Come again?
Unlimited supply.
Exactly, unlimited supply.
Yes.
So you might tend to overindulge. And that is one of our negative coping mechanisms. That's why we keep on saying that it is important for all of us to have some kind of routine. So that is one of the negative possible coping mechanisms. Overindulging in alcohol or other substances. It could be marijuana and many other substances. Over-the-counter medication. Because you see now, people are now sadly becoming nocturnal.
Yes.
Because you have a lot of time and you're watching a series, you're walking within your compound, you can't go far, or you go for a drive and come back. Things are not usual kind of way that we are so used to.
Yes.
So you find that as an individual, you will find yourself possibly sleeping during the day and being up at night. So you find that even your sleep is affected. So there is that element of either oversleeping or not sleeping at all. That could be also a negative way of coping. So you find that even your normal way of sleeping is affected. And definitely it could have an impact on your moods, your thoughts, and all these emotions I've mentioned can be affected negatively. You might find yourself being extremely irritable. You might find yourself withdrawing most of the time, not wanting to interact with people, and so forth and so on. Another possible negative way of coping during this time is over shopping. And I think many experts out there are telling people this is a time for you not to overspend.
Yes.
But the reality again is that you're at home, you're bored. You've done everything. Come again?
With a click of a button, you can buy things.
Exactly. Online shopping.
Yes.
So it's another way of actually filling that void, that void of I mean, I'm not doing things that I'm not in control. I'm not doing things that I used to do them. So you possibly start over shopping. So that's something you need to look out for.
Yes.
Possibly make sure that there's some kind of moderation in the way you spend. Another possible negative coping mechanism is the daydreaming. Surprisingly enough, you might think that daydreaming is just for people whose minds tend to digress when they're in class or in a boring meeting or mundane kind of situation. But surprisingly enough, as human beings, we tend to have moments when our minds will wander a little bit.
Yes.
Now, during this time, you might find yourself really daydreaming about so many things. And the challenge sometimes would be you might possibly start daydreaming about negative things.
Mm-hmm.
Things like what is happening right now, what would possibly happen in the next 2-3 weeks,
yes.
the next 21 days, where now our movement has been limited. So you start actually finding yourself having those ruminative thoughts that are negative.
Yes.
And that continues definitely. As it continues, it will affect the way your emotions and your behavior. Another negative coping mechanism would be uncontrolled rage. I want to talk about anger in terms of anything small that might not be going right. And especially for people who have traits of perfectionism. They're so used to doing things in a certain way. They're extremely meticulous, organized, conscientious. These kind of people, at this moment, would actually really, really, really have it very extremely challenging to because they are not in their true element. Because there's a lot of distractions, there are a lot of possible kids playing around, there's too much noise coming from the TV. It's almost total chaos, and you're feeling like a sense of lack of control.
Yes.
That is another possible negative way of trying to cope.
Mm-hmm.
So all these are things that we need to look out for during this time when we are spending a lot of time at home.
How do we cope then? How do we stop that? How do we stop the over drinking, the over shopping, how do we what is the solution?
One philosophy I really like is that of being aware is being alive. And actually, we've just helped people just realize, just being cognizant of the fact that those are possible negative ways of coping. There could be many others.
Yes.
So when you are aware of that, then it's time for you to do a personal inventory. And ask yourself, am I actually overindulging? Am I doing this beyond what I used to do?
Yeah.
And definitely, if you actually critically think about it, you'll realize that deep down, you are feeling a sense of lack of control, and you are trying to bring some kind of balance, but it is not working in your favor.
Yes.
So after doing that inventory, and you realize possibly the cause of this is what is happening now, then like I usually, and I've said consistently, then it will be important for you to actually focus on a routine together with your family. Whoever you live with, you could actually come up with activities or things that you can do. Okay, so if you live with our family, then you could possibly, and I said last time, this is an opportunity, you could possibly come up with ways and means of doing things that keep you busy throughout the day, and having an accountability partner. So people who live with you, if you can agree and sit together and come up with things that will keep you going,
yes,
then it would help. Why do I say this? It is because human beings are naturally beings who are used to connection.
yes,
socializing, interacting. We can't do without it.
Yes.
So if we can create our small world within our spaces, and come up with things that we do together, we involve one another, then we can start having a sense of attachment and connection.
Yes.
Then we will be able to actually deal with these issues better. Another way that we can actually cope is being able to get into activities or hobbies or things that you've always wanted to do but you've never done.
Yes.
Okay. Another way of going about this is being able to actually think about communication, reaching out to people, friends, and so forth and so on. Like we said, in moderation, you can start possibly doing things with your children, playing games, video games. Maybe this is a time when you've been too busy and your son or your daughter has been asking you to do activities with them, like playing a game and so forth. You can get into their world and really know what it is that they go through or they experience.
Yes.
And you never know. This time round, you could be that parent who will possibly have a reconnection with your son or your daughter that you've never had before, and it will be a total game changer now and in times to come. Why do I say so? My hope is that as this continues, and once this has come to pass, then parents can be able to actually have a better relationship with their children and continue with this routine.
Yes.
We need not to forget that this is a big possible beginning of better things to come in your relationship or interaction with your children. Those of you who live alone, it is challenging, especially when you're in your own space and you're alone. You might feel alone, but I have to say that you could be alone, but you are not lonely. You can be alone, but you should not give that opportunity of loneliness to come into the picture. And what are some of the things that you can do so that you don't indulge in the negative ways of coping? Just the same way I've said with the families and so forth and so on, it's important for you to have the routine. It's important for you to reach out to friends. Possibly if you have close friends, call them every day. Morning, evening, check out on them and vice versa. You get involved in activities online that are healthy, and just possibly get to do a hobby and that kind of a thing. Go out and enjoy the sun. You can see the sun is out today for a few minutes and come back in. And those kind of things. I mean, these suggestions are not set on stone.
Yes.
It's you, and you understand yourself. It's for you to like really appreciate that, yes, I will need to come up with a way of doing things and avoid negative vibe, because right now there's too much information out there. There could be a lot of negative vibe that's coming from individuals. It is important for you to possibly filter that. Yeah.
Before we move to the next question, there are people who might not have the willpower to do something or anything at the moment. Like even feeling like going out to look at the sun. They're like, what's the point? I watched the sunrise yesterday. They have no willpower, no psych. How do they get themselves up every morning? What are some of the things that you can tell them to help themselves to have that motivation to wake up every morning with a positive attitude?
The question you asked is very difficult. Why do I say it's difficult? It's because we all know that, and quite a number of individuals possibly have some form of anxiety or depression or pre-existing condition that we're probably managing.
Yes.
And now we are moving into mental health issues. Even before all this started happening, you probably find that there were individuals who were regularly visiting their psychiatrists, their psychologists, or their mental health professionals.
Yes.
And suddenly you're told now you cannot possibly meet face-to-face unless it's an emergency. You can not have that personal touch and go see your therapists. It is a challenge.
Yes.
And then now this. Then my advice would be, if you have any form of mental health, to just continue connecting, whichever way, virtually, with your mental health professional.
Yes.
That will be the first thing if you have some pre-existing condition. And if you notice then that you are, like you're saying, not being able to wake up, just wanting to stay in, not wanting to interact with people, and these symptoms are persistent, and they are starting to even affect you, and people are noticing there's a change,
Yes.
then it possibly be high time for you to also reach out to a mental health expert, to talk to a counselor, a psychologist, or even a psychiatrist.
Yes.
Just explain what it is that is going on. Because I am aware that the government, and I think they're doing a very good job, they're allowing some of the professionals to continue actually assisting people. They're allowing people to leave other counties to come for their appointments. That is commendable.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of hope. I mean, if you are actually suffering, because during this time when you are not actually keeping busy,
yeah,
and you're just home, then this is a time when now these mental health issues possibly even become very, very challenging. What I could say is that they still help. You can always reach out
yes,
to the professionals who are still around in Nairobi and other environs, and they will be able to assist you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there are people with pre-existing conditions. This is very important that you've actually touched on. You know, we were talking about what is in the media right now is people with maybe pneumonia, pre-existing conditions. They get worse due to the coronavirus. But we've not looked at the pre-existing conditions of mental health, like depression and anxiety, which now can be getting worse. There are drug addicts out there, you know, people who are trying to, you know, get back in line. How are they going to deal with this? The drug addicts, the addiction, they're not getting, you know, what they want out there. It's going to be a very difficult time for them.
I think we've mentioned a little bit about what to do when it comes to these other conditions, mental health conditions. It's interesting that you're mentioning people who are recovering from various addictions.
Yes.
Especially alcohol and drugs. And the protocol usually is, if one is having withdrawal symptoms, then you will need to get detoxified by a health expert, preferably a psychiatrist,
yes,
for 7 to 9 days, and a possible supervision also by a psychologist. Mm-hmm. And then after that, then you're evaluated and referred to a rehabilitation center.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and that's what I'm saying. Sometimes, whenever there is a challenge like this, it's important to also have a mindset of what opportunity comes with such a situation. Because I think we have subconsciously been, or those of us who are dealing with addictions, we've subconsciously been, you're subconsciously going through some form of addiction therapy. You're in a rehab.
Yeah.
It's like because a rehab is a confined environment. We are all in some form of rehabilitation right now.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think it's important that we all go back to basics. What you're describing right now is basics. What are some of the key basic things that we can start doing?
Yes.
The research we are talking about, re-evaluation. So I would encourage the people who are at home and they are struggling with some form of addiction. Mm-hmm. As long as they're not having withdrawal symptoms, possibly they've gotten help. And if they've not gotten help, they can reach out to the government facilities or possible private facility that could be working, and possibly go through the detoxification and come back home or go to rehabs. Rehabs are still there, I believe, and they possibly have a way of going about the vetting and all that. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. Mm-hmm. But I know just being in this environment, you can actually get into some kind of rehabilitation.
True.
And there is a lot of resources on the internet. There are professionals who are actually helping people virtually. This is an opportunity for you to actually realize that many addicts, when they think about themselves, they find that the likely root cause of their addiction many times is some form of trauma, a form of maybe a lack of attachment that emanates from their early childhood. And now, if they're in an environment where they are with people, their family, it is important that family also tries to understand them and support them and listen to them and understand where they're coming from. Yes. This could be a time for people to heal as individuals, as families. So, to put it, as we've put it very well, we are all in rehab. So let's embrace the rehabilitation and learn ways and means of coping. And I believe that we will come out better people. We'll come out on the other side, enlightened individuals who are willing to even embrace the reality of managing our mental well-being, because there is no mental well-being there's no physical well-being without mental well-being. That is what we are realizing all over the world. And addiction is a big problem in our society. If as a family we can actually get time to reconnect and grow, well and good. If there are challenges, I think there are professionals out there who are still working and will be able to assist you accordingly.
Amazing. To my final question, this pandemic will have a long-term trauma effect on all of us around the world. How are we going to deal with this? It might show up maybe 5 to 10 years later. Are there signs? Are there ways to avoid such trauma? How are we going to handle this?
I think all over what is happening, this thing is happening to everyone in the world.
Yes.
And there have been pandemics even in the past. When you look in history, there are pandemics that were there. What I can say is that we have to be optimistic. We have to appreciate that this shall pass. We can see things are starting to come back to normal.
Yes.
When we look at what has happened, it started in December, and second a few months, there's a high likelihood then we are in for the long haul. We are going to be in for some time, a number of months.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that we live one day at a time. Okay. There are some things that we cannot avoid, loss. Okay. When you go through loss, there is a likelihood because of what is happening with the condition, the pandemic, that they are limiting the number of people who can go for the burial and so forth and so on, which definitely has an impact on the people emotionally and psychologically, the family members. So it is a very difficult time because you don't really get time to grieve, okay, your loved ones. But having said that, the reality is that there are things that are within our control.
Yeah.
And there are those that are not. All that we have to do is to continue having hope. Most importantly, continue processing our emotions. If you are sad, express your sadness. If you are happy, whatever is positive in your life, express the joy for that moment. If you are disgusted and angry, express your anger at whatever is happening. But don't get to a point where now you're stuck on all that emotional roller coaster, which eventually will have a negative impact on your mental health. So these are difficult times, but we will continue being hopeful. It is challenging, yes. And, as a mental professional say, we will need to just continue living one day at a time and dealing with issues as they unfold. I don't want to preempt anything. We'll just go step by step with optimism.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Lambert Oigara from CBT Kenya. On life in isolation, he has told us something very important: live one day at a time. Thank you very much, Lambert. Anything else you'd like to add, maybe, on top of that?
Not at all. I mean, stay safe, stay at home, embrace this opportunity that has presented to us, where we are able to actually interact with our loved ones, get to know each other, knowing that it is going to help